If you were with us last week on This Week in Agribusiness, you heard us talking about the role of the aerial applicators. The fact that about 28% of the cropland in the United States gets visited sometime during the year by those folks in what I would call the agricultural Air Force, the aerial applicators. Jim Perrin is one of those. He flies out of Bancroft, Wisconsin. In fact, he works very closely with his spouse, as he explained to me, as he operates 3 GPS systems on his plane to put that crop input exactly where it's needed.
My wife will actually email the maps and the mix and the prescription for that field to the airplane. Myself or either one of my pilots, and this is the case for the industry, we'll go out and we'll spray the field based on what we get emailed to us in the GPS. And then after we get back, we will in turn email the job file back to the office, and that'll have the as applied and all the weather information all on it automatically.
We can't help but think of how farmers are affected by the weather, but boy, you guys have to watch it so closely, and not all the days are severe clear, are they?
That's right. On a foggy morning or a windy day, I always tell my wife my next career will have nothing to do with the weather.
I can imagine. And, you know, it's a fairly narrow window of opportunity for you, is it not, in many instances?
Yeah, and that's the big advantage behind aircraft. We can do a lot of acres in a hurry. So if there's a pest outbreak or if there's a weather event that causes plant injury, we can get out there and treat that plant and hopefully protect it before disease can take hold, or if there's a pest outbreak with bugs, we can generally get that taken care of before it becomes a widespread issue.
Am I correct that part of the maintenance of your equipment is indeed calibration of your nozzles and your boom to make sure that you're applying with the kind of precision that you want and need?
That's correct. And in fact, a lot of the vegetable companies now require what's called a gap study. So at the beginning of the season, we'll provide all of the paperwork that shows that the airplane or helicopter has been pattern tested, what nozzles we're running, how the spray pattern looks. We're looking for a uniform pattern to evenly control the pest.
And again, putting the crop input exactly where it's needed. That just as the farmer does, he doesn't want to waste any.
That's correct. When I first started Max, it was kind of interesting. We would get a work order for a farm and it would be the same product for the entire farm. And now we'll actually take fields, and I've seen field prescriptions come in now that have taken one field and split it into 3 separate applications, and 3 different parts of the field will get a separate application altogether. So the whole thing has changed substantially. What we used to look for one product to go out and do a day's work, now we're going to be changing. So each application is a prescription for that individual field.
It's just as tricky as it looks, isn't it, to fly one of these aircraft? And how close to the ground are you for most of your application work?
For our liquid application, we look to be about 50% of the wingspan on a fixed wing. Most of the fixed wing airplanes are between 50 and 60 feet wide overall, so we want to be around that 25-foot mark above the crop when we're spraying at the max. And then when we're doing dry, we'll go up. If we're doing fertilizer or, for instance, seeding cover crop, we'll climb up to about telephone pole height or treetop height. And the helicopters generally will work around 10 feet high. And that's changed our droplet spectrums, but we do need a little bit of altitude in order to get the entire spray pattern to fill in correctly.
So what about the pluses of the helicopter versus the fixed wing aircraft? Does the wash from the blades force some of the product down into the plants a little bit better with a helicopter?
Actually, once the helicopter goes through transitional lift, it's really, really similar to an airplane. The big advantage to the helicopter is they're much more maneuverable. So a lot of times, like in our business, we'll use the helicopter where we're in tight next to a lot of people or a lot of obstructions or obstacles, and then that helicopter can turn in tighter, stay closer to the field, whereas the fixed wing is generally a little bit heavier and a little bit faster, so it takes us a little more real estate to get turned around. So an advantage or a disadvantage, personally, I feel each tool is a tool in the toolbox, whether that's a ground rig, a helicopter, an airplane, or eventually the UASs.
Yes, as Jim Perrin pointed out there, those unmanned aircraft will be addressing the needs along with those fixed-wing aircraft at 120 miles an hour, the helicopters over the fields at 90 miles an hour, unsung heroes in crop production, the agriculture aviators.